Hi Charles, thanks for the question. Everybody, I'll try to remember to link to the video. It's kind of about how could someone like Newton be religious, and also what if when, is it Doug Stanhope talks about kids believe religion because we shove it into their head while they still have a soft spot to shove it in through. And the question was like, what if you put the dogma of logic, and is there such a thing in there? Yeah, anything can be taken dogmatically. I think all dogma is dangerous, but basically, so I'd love to quibble about let's make it non-dogmatic. But the nice thing about logic as a dogma is it leads back to its solution. So you had classical physicists taking logic dogmatically, to the point of assuming that the universe was so mathematical that included the foundations of mathematics being the foundations of the universe. So laws of categorization and definitions of things and various stuff like that you have in logic. Okay, but they eventually figured this out. If you apply it to natural philosophy, at least you're going to eventually figure out what was broken in that assumption. But it can do a lot of bad things. This is when we see scientists taking part, actually not just being blamed for the technological results that businessmen exploit, but their own things and tendencies we've seen. I think a lot of them come from dogma. Dogma's dangerous. Dogma's deadly. Still, if we did that with kids, I think we'd start to see a huge improvement in our social infrastructure and the way that our global economy works, or the economy of whoever would do that within the 15 years it took for those kids to mature. Because this information processing, it works. It works. It's like if you apply good mathematics to a stream of data, you can get information. You can extract the signal from the noise. So it doesn't really matter if I'm right on which part's signal or noise. If we had, 40 million kids that understood logic, we'd have a greater power. We'd get more signal. It's a more delicate instrument. Assuming it's tuned to get data. So yeah, now would they start having these, entertaining, like, I don't know about Newton being a devotee to Jesus or exactly what that would mean, but I mean, I've seen myself one of his Bibles with annotations in it. I know he read the Bible. So the way I see that is that we have spiritual sides. We cannot stop them. You cannot cap them. It is also this magical thinking side where you see meaning in stuff. But that's also the artistic side where, thank God, we see meaning in a beautiful flower. It represents the beauty of life. Or it represents the victim the beautiful victim that makes life unlivable if you're an antinatalist, and so on. So, I think the best we can do is what Newton achieved, which is, if the Bible happens to be your thing, and there's a lot of reasons. Maybe you expected the Bible to be spiritual, and you read it down by the creek, and sitting by the creek creates spiritual experiences in my experience. So, you might get that association or whatever. Spirituality is personal. Could be done from reading any book other than Catcher in the Rye. So, just kidding. But not really. But anyway, so what he had done there is kind of what I'm talking about that I had done, which is, to indulge in your spirituality, however silly or whatever. This logic is something available to you. It doesn't mean it gets applied everywhere, but it can mean that you have better reasons and better tools to sort of isolate things to certain domains. So you can read the Bible and think of it as, some sort of a book of the universe that motivates you to go do mathematical and scientific invention. And that's a personal thing. Other people might be demotivated from doing it. And in Newton's case, using him as an example, at least he compartmentalized it so that since he did have this natural philosopher urge, he didn't let his fears from religion stop him. Instead, religion had to yield. And it's like with Spinoza, did not want to give up God evidently, but religion yielded to his other ideas about natural philosophy, and he's like, well, God is the soul of this basically this material universe that is like we're all looking into, So, yeah, and I think, I think this is, if we're going to allow ourselves to be truly spiritual, we also have to have a secular ethic that we use to double check. So if our religious ideas get us inflamed and we feel like we have to have a holy war attitude, we need to check our head with the secular ethics that we can share and develop and teach in schools and as a pragmatic thing. And the secular ethic is what we would model our laws on, and it's also the other way. Let's say you have an ethic, a secular ethic, and you model a law, but the law is imperfect and it doesn't achieve that goal. Then your actual secular ethics have become like what your practice is, and you might have to worry about that and just adjust that, right, to try to get that right. And this secular ethic tells you about what your rights are for other people, what you can do. You have free speech, which means you can do what some people consider accosting them with ideas and information, but you don't have free violence. You can't force them. We have to have a social system that's not based on the whim of what religious or ethical majority we have. The majorities need to know there's certain rights, so that, you know what I'm saying? We do that with the secular ethic. But the religious ethic, whatever, you can think your dog talks to you. It's like the son of Sam thought his dog talked to him. The problem was that the problem wasn't even that his dog told him to kill people. The problem was that he did that, So I think there's ways to isolate, and Newton's a good example of how it's a well-known thing now because of our theistic arguments in our debate that goes on. But really, it was a subcultural thing. It's not how we thought of Newton. It's like a well-known asterisk, a novelty, because he did not let that impact. He did not say, hey, I think light is a particle because that makes more sense. That's how God would want it. He never did that. And it's sort of, this is what we need out of a non-theism as opposed to an anti-theism, which is we know how to do reasoning without gods. You can believe in God still, as long as you know how to do the reasoning where even if you're motivated to find a certain answer because of your spiritual side, and that includes gods, you know how to, when you're arguing to your society, let's have this law, let's do this, you never get to say, because God this, or God that, or God would want it, or God told me. That's not the reason you can use. You can have a personal motivation, and hopefully we can all be honest with each other and say, well, look, I think abortion should be illegal because God told me in a dream. But I will argue that it should be illegal because we protect life and blah, 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 blah. And that's the argument we're in now, and that's why we get into, well, when does life, because this is where different ethical systems start to agree. It's like, if we could decide when life starts, well, we all think you shouldn't. Human life, then we all think, blah, 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 you shouldn't. So, we have to struggle at what the secular thing is a little bit of hand-waving in that it's a democratic ethic designed to be secular, like especially designed because in a world where you have religious freedom, which means a freedom to be as crazy as you want to be, you have to have a way to say, here's how, we're going to interact with each other. Here's how we're going to subtract out some of the crazy. We're going to specifically allow it, so we're going to specifically know the techniques to subtract its impact on other people because it's personal. The idea is that you can let it have as much personal impact, but at that point where your rights butt up against everybody else's, then some of your rights to have your own beliefs persist because of freedom of speech, but some of them don't. Like, you can't tell somebody what they can do if it's just for a personal spiritual reason that you can't put in secular terms. So the summary is that I don't really think it's a problem. I think maybe it's the other way around, that we should all be expressing more of this kind of personal spirituality without being hung up on what it means, but it'll be a while till we get there, no doubt.